The Earnestly Speaking podcast is a show that is founded on free-flowing conversation and may at times venture into
All right, welcome to the Earnestly podcast. I'm your host, Ernest. Music coming to you late night Wednesday in South Florida. On the line, old friend of the pod, also the host of the Locked On Heat podcast, my old friend David Ramil and colleague. Dave, what's up, buddy?
Oh, man, it has been way too long since last we spoke. I was just looking up now. Our last call before the actual NBA season, what feels like a decade ago. So it's been way too. I mean, I know we've talked since then, but not actually recorded a show. It's been crazy the last 8-9 months, and what's happened over the last that time period. Feels like forever.
These last 4 months have felt like 4 years. Right now, if we never had a pandemic to ever exist, for example, the season been over already. We've already been free. We'll probably be in the middle of free agency right now.
Yeah, it would be Summer League. I think Vegas Summer League would have been taking place at this point.
Correct. Instead, we are still looking at a restart of the season in a couple weeks. Before we get to that, though, of course, and other things we'll talk about quick. How was your, your pandemic experience so far?
Not as bad as a lot of people, obviously, and so we've been very, very lucky. I've got my toddler son and my wife, and we're hanging in there. We've been healthy. She works in healthcare, so she's been still going to work and dealing with, she actually elderly care, so that's a high-risk group, obviously. Right. But we've been very, very fortunate. She's been healthy. We've both tested negative on a couple occasions, so it's been, again, as good as could be. I think, like a lot of the population, we've been trying to limit going anywhere. I mean, aside from the grocery store, I don't think I've gone out anywhere. I take my son to the park on occasion when it's empty, although not everybody seems to be adhering to the same rules as far as social distancing and wearing masks and things of that sort. So not always convenient, but for the most part, again, I don't want to sound like I'm complaining or being negative, because there are people who are being hit by this a lot worse than we are. Yes. And so we've been fortunate.
It is quite annoying, though, to go out there. You're following all the rules. You're doing everything you can to, social distance and to wear masks and all that, and just do what you can to not only to keep yourself safe, but everybody else safe. And yet you have all these nimrods out there. You're just trying to rebel against the system, if you will. This is quite annoying.
It is. It is weird how protecting yourself and each other has become politicized. I mean, it seems to me like it would be something so simple, and yet I don't know that. I don't know how you could interpret it any way other than just like, I'd like to take care of other people, so I'm not going to be an asshole about it. But some people would tend to think that that's some political movement, to rebel against. I don't understand it myself.
I don't get it. Even something as simple as protecting life, we can't even get agreement on. It's got to be politicized. I mean, this world is going to hell in a handbasket, man. I'm just saying this goal. I'm not even trying to talk about politics. I do on the show occasionally, but it's just this simple things that annoy me. Simple things like this, like just wear your fucking mask. How hard is that? I'm not saying go outside. I'm just saying going to a store. You go to Walmart, just wear a mask 5 minutes. What do you need to do?
Yeah.
But, whatever.
It's not that hard. It really isn't. I look at these people and they come around, like, again, when you were just saying, you go to Walmart, Target, or Publix, anywhere, and they come around the aisle, and it's just like, next thing you know, they're like right up in your personal space, and it's like, dude, I don't want that. I wouldn't want that even if it wasn't a pandemic. I certainly don't want it right now, but that's a whole other story. We could talk about this for hours. People have been talking about it for months, and there's no resolution. In fact, things are getting worse.
Absolutely. How's everything on Locked On Heat?
Good. Very strangely enough, numbers are pretty solid. People are still listening. I've been trying to, come up with content over the last 3.5 months. It's not always easy. Not always easy.
digging now. I can see the work. I'm subscribed also. I'm like, noticing some episodes like, wow, you really are digging some content this week.
Yeah, I mean, we had like a run of shows that were where you take like a specific year in franchise history and talk about what's happened there. So that was good. I was fortunate enough to talk to Heat Lifer Keith Askins. You might be one of the few people to actually appreciate Keith and his role with the team, but he was great to talk to. He's now the director of pro scouting for the team, and he was fantastic. I had a lot of great stories about his time in Miami, so that was fun.
Yeah. No, Keith Hass is one of my all-time favorites, actually.
Yeah.
All-time
He's a good guy, real good guy, and Shea Battier too. So that was two real good conversations with some nice 3-and-D type players from Heat franchise history. Other than that, looking forward to, well, I'm not sure if looking forward is the exact way. Planning ahead to the NBA restarting in just a few weeks, because obviously that is taking up a lot of my attention right now as to what's going to happen with Miami and the bubble and everything else. So,
well, I was going to ask you that real quick. I'm glad you mentioned that. Realistically speaking, are you excited about the restart?
I am not. It's mixed. There is a part of me that is without a doubt excited for the opportunity to watch basketball, to cover it, to talk about actual gameplay, and not having to go back into franchise history and kind of come up with topics of conversation. But at the same time, like, there is the overall reality that this is just a money grab from NBA owners, and so that creates a conflict for me. Is that as much as we're dealing with so many issues of social justice and Black Lives Matter and fighting police brutality, and of course a pandemic that shadows everything, here are 22 owners that are saying no, it's better to just go ahead and play basketball at this point in time. So that leaves it a little difficult for me to kind of just fully appreciate it the way that I'd like to. At the same time, again, like I said, I mean, I want to watch basketball. I want to cover it. I want to talk about what's going on. It's always been fun for me. It's been, even before I was a media member, I was appreciating and loving basketball, and I've been doing that for decades. And so I want to watch basketball again, but it's not as easy for me as it once was. Like the kind of joy that I feel when the playoffs start, or, even covering it as media, just being able to go into locker rooms and things of that sort, talk to players and get excited about the opportunities that they have. None of that seems to matter right now. So it's a little difficult for me.
No, I'm with you, because I'm in the same ballpark. Like people are really shocked when I tell them that I don't miss sports. I really don't, because this is a priority. Like, to me, sports feels empty and feels like that's not a priority. Not saying that doesn't mean I'm not gonna not watch when the games start in late July. I'm gonna watch, obviously. When baseball starts a couple weeks, I'm gonna watch that too. But to say I'm looking forward to it, I'm excited about it, nah. I'm not. I'm nowhere close to ready for it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I feel I'm in the same boat. It's just, you can't kind of just enjoy it for what it is, knowing that there are so many things outside of that happening and impacting that enjoyment. And so it's going to be very, very weird. And look, I've mentioned this a lot in a bunch of shows that I've done over the past week. And, we've seen a number of positive cases among NBA players traveling to the bubble. That's not going to stop. That's not going to stop once they're in the bubble. I mean, they're still going to be at risk from contamination there because, of course, NBA players might be quarantined to some degree, but the people who work at the facility are not. The people who work at the resort, staff members, even media members are going to be traveling in and out of they're all going to be at risk. And so, it's to me, watching the basketball play out over the next couple of weeks and even the next couple of months, it's about who survives the long run without a superstar or key role player contracting COVID-19 and then kind of being forced out of the playoff system, because if it's a role player, like even in Miami Heat context, if it's a guy like, Tyler Hero or Derrick Jones Jr. or somebody along those lines, then you could say, oh, well, that sucks. But what if it's a superstar? What if it's a Bam Adebayo or a Giannis Antetokounmpo or somebody along those lines? I mean,
absolutely.
This whole idea of basketball moving on as normal ain't going to happen. I mean, that's just not realistic at all.
Yeah, no doubt about that. That being said, talking basketball quick and restart and all that, like, not having a crowd there, of course, I feel like from a playing perspective, if you will, like, obviously you have the favorites, Lakers, Bucks, Clippers, all that. I gotta tell you, not having a crowd there, it actually opens up a lot of parity here. Like, to me, I think teams like Boston become dangerous. Teams like the Heat, that have players, that have horses, become more dangerous now without a crowd. Because a lot of these top teams also really do lean on a home court advantage, and I feel like with no crowd there now, I think we might, assuming that things go smoothly. There's no guys that get, key guys that get the the virus, whatever it may be. I feel like parity wise, this could be one of a tournament for the ages, actually.
It's going to be really, really interesting. Like I was lucky enough to be on the Zoom conference calls that a lot of players have been doing over the last few days. Once they made mandatory practices around the league open and things of that sort, PR teams have been arranging for players to appear on these Zoom conference calls, and they all seem very optimistic about their chances and everything else. It's a lot like media days around the league. Like every 30 teams think they're going to contend for a title, when in reality that's not the case. But they're all optimistic about what's going on, and at the same time they have no idea what to expect. Like Goran Dragic, he mentioned that when he's part of the Slovenian national team, they not sequester, but they kind of take him away from his family for a couple months so that they can fully immerse themselves on training for EuroLeague and things of that sort, all the different, basketball things that they do, and they kind of separate from family. They're not quarantined, so it's not the same exact thing. But he mentioned how difficult it is from a psychological perspective being away from family and things of that sort. I mean, Antetokounmpo just had a baby. Him and his I think fiance just had a baby, and so imagine being plucked away from being able to see your family and things of that sort. So that there's going to be a lot of factors that we have not considered. And to your point, the crowd noise, it's going to be a strange viewing experience for teams that are there that kind of rely on, when LeBron has a big play. Let's say, for example, he stands up, he pumps his chest, he looks up to the crowd. Ain't going to be any of that. There's nothing like that.
It's pretty strange, man.
Very, very weird. And so it's like, how do you got to get emotionally psyched up for 48 minutes of basketball without a crowd there to kind of cheer you on and everything else? And, even from a refereeing perspective, think about how often refs play to the crowd and build on momentum. A charge call goes the other way and things of that sort. They get caught up in the emotionality of it too. Without a doubt, they're human. And so many different factors. It's going to be very, very, very weird. Like the players all say, well, we've had experience playing in quiet arenas before, whether in the G League or something like that. That's not at all. Especially think about the finals. The finals are going to be played. Normally the finals are with like dozens of media from around the world. You have 10,000 plus fans packed into an arena. None of that's going to happen. So it's going to be fighting for a championship in an empty arena in the middle of Orlando with nobody cheering. I can't even imagine what that must be like.
All those factors are why I was pro this shut it down, start next year.
It's too late. You can't do it. But even that, I mean, that's the argument is, I've seen that before. People say, "Oh, shut it down, get ready for next year." It's like, what's the difference between now and 4 or 5 months from now? Like, is it realistic to expect that all of a sudden either the coronavirus is going to be wiped off the face of the planet in 5 months, or the league's going to be in a better position? Like, from what I've talked to or heard from league experts, they need this season and the money that it's going to bring in just to even consider the realities of next season. So it has to move forward. Like I debated this earlier this week, on a podcast. I said, it's already too far gone. They need to kind of move forward because
we're past point of your turn now. We're past point of your return. We're ready
for sure.
We're going full speed ahead. I mean, and again, look, am I looking forward to it? No, but I'm gonna watch. Absolutely. I mean, come on now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it is what it is. All right. So the main reason I wanted to bring on the show today, it was that now today is July 7th, actually, I believe, right? It's 7th or 8th today.
Today's the 8th, the 10th anniversary of the decision.
So today, right? Was it today or was it yesterday?
It was today, July 8th, 2010, yeah.
The 7th was actually when Chris Bosh and Dwayne resigned with Miami.
That's absolutely correct, yeah.
So, want to ask you, where were you during the decision? Because obviously it was a big specter. It was a big, obviously the ESPN, the sit down with Jim Gray and all that. Where were you when LeBron was making this momentous decision to come to Miami?
I was, on a larger sense, I was obviously not a media person or anything like that. I was like most of you, a fan, at that time. And I was so caught up in the free agency of 2010 and wondering what was going to happen when I remember being at work in my office. I was doing PR at the time, and I was logging on for regular updates, and I saw the press conference that you're talking about. Not a press conference, but it was Dwayne Wade coming from his house or something like that, and then Chris Bosh, or maybe it was the other way around. Chris Bosh was coming from like an in-home studio or his computer, and Dwayne was at a summer camp that he was hosting in Chicago or something like that. and then both of them saying that they were going to come to Miami. And then, of course, we started to hear the buzz about LeBron, the decision. Of course, there had been the reports from Stephen A. Smith and others that Miami was a done deal. So crazy. When the decision actually came out, I mean, I was a mess. I couldn't wait to hear about it. I was so excited and nervous and everything else like that. I didn't really think that he was coming to Miami. I thought I would put it at 50-50 before the decision itself took place, but I was glued to my TV. I was sitting on the couch on the edge of my seat, a lot like I was during Miami Dolphins games. And then like maybe 10, 15 minutes into it, I started pacing back and forth, grabbing the back of my I was grabbing the back of my couch, like digging my fingernails into the seat cushions in anticipation of what was going to happen. And then when he finally, when Jim Gray asked that question, like my heart was pounding, I was sweating, I was nervous. And then when he finally said that he's coming to South Beach, like I yelled at the top of my lungs. I was talking to my wife about it early today. I don't know that I've ever been as excited for any single sports moment as I was for the decision. Like the idea of forming this incredible team, it was amazing. LeBron, it's never happened like that. No player at his peak like LeBron was in 2010, choosing to leave a team the way he did and everything else. Like, I don't think it's ever happened before. We've seen great players move back and forth without a doubt, but it's never been quite the same thing. And I was so excited. I was yelling. I imagine you were as well.
Yeah. So I spoke on a podcast a couple weeks ago about this. I got to credit my dad for this. So every year, my father and I, my brother, and our cousins, because we're all scattered throughout the country throughout the year, during the holidays, we get together, we play basketball, like for a couple hours, whatever. Just kind of, same teams every year because this is what we do. And this is 2009. This is December 2009. This is before this whole thing,
Sure.
6 months out. And my dad says, LeBron's coming to Miami. I'm like, you're full of shit.
Oh.
There's no way hell LeBron's coming to Miami. Why would he come to Miami for? What is it? Because at the time, the narrative was New York.
Right.
They have New York. Staying in Cleveland. Maybe go somewhere else. But Miami was it never struck with me 6 months out that Pat Riley and company were already securing cap space for that, that time to get in the room with.
I knew that they were preparing for that possibility, but I was more convinced that Dwayne was going to leave than I was that LeBron would come. Like, I mean, when Dwayne took that second meeting with Chicago,
yep,
I was like, oh, he's gone. He's out of here.
Me too. Yeah. So my dad goes, no, he's coming to Miami. Trust me, he's coming to Miami. I'm like, okay, if you say so. Meanwhile, I'm hoping this team gets to the second round of playoffs where Jermaine O'Neal's center, that kind of thing. So the lead up to that, like, up until probably the 2 days before that, I didn't believe it. Then I kept hearing reports that LeBron actually was spotted in Miami a couple times, and all that. I'm like, whatever. Now back then I was 30 years old, so I'm still young and naive. So, like maybe it is. I don't know what happens. And then I was at work at night, but at my job we have like freaking TVs. I'm a poker dealer, so we have a lot of TVs. So the whole room stopped when the whole thing was played. Wow. And I remember, when he said Miami, I was like, holy crap, really? Wow. And you can relate to this too, being a longtime Heat fan like I have. We've been Heat fans from pretty much from day one, since the cycle era. The idea for us of getting a guy of that caliber to our team, it never registered that we could ever get to that point. Like, just the fact that Dwayne Wade became a star in Miami was amazing for us. The fact that Zoe became who he was amazing for us. And we got Shaq for a couple of years, at the very end of his peak. But the fact that we could get a transcendent player at the ilk of Michael Jordan type, which is LeBron, it never registered to me until I was like, wow, we got LeBron James on the team. And I remember being so excited. I remember thinking big picture, how this could do for the economy here in South Florida, and all that. Because you go back 10 years now, this is my thinking back that week. If the Heat got Bosh, Wade, and Rudy Gay, I'm happy. Rudy Gay. If the third guy was Rudy Gay, cool. The Heat won free agency.
That I had totally forgotten that Rudy was in the picture there. Like that. I remember Stoudemire. Yeah, sure. I mean, Stoudemire was a concept at one point, like the idea of him. Carlos Boozer, I was just talking about that too. Remember, Boozer was training here in South Florida. He loved Miami. It seemed like he was a great fit, etc. I mean, I can't imagine. Yeah, if they had been able to get Rudy Gay, that would have been a nice fit. It would have been a team they probably still would have been good enough to contend for the Eastern Conference Championship, if not the finals. But man, that you're absolutely right. Like the idea of being able to get LeBron to this team never really crossed my mind. It didn't seem possible. Like there were so many things going against it, and yeah, he didn't know what his preference was. You didn't know that what he wanted to do. Like obviously the pull of him staying in Cleveland was great because of the hometown favoritism and everything that he's built in that community. Right. But then there's also the allure of playing in the Mecca in New York, one of the biggest markets around the NBA. Chicago had a very good team that could contend, probably a team that was better at that point to contend for a title than Miami.
The Nets also had a chance too because of the Jay-Z connection with him.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Mikhail Prokhorov, right? The owner at that time, he was building a huge team, et cetera. Oh man, that was a crazy time period. It's just to think about the reality of him coming to that team. Oh man, I debated this. I'm curious. I'm pretty sure I know how you feel, but what was your feeling about the whole party that took place a couple days later? Like,
I'm glad you asked that because I watched it in hindsight hours after they aired it. It felt uncomfortable for me personally. I was like, I don't know, you guys haven't won anything yet. What are you guys doing? Like, stop. Like, even I wasn't really with it back then. I was like, yeah, I get it, cool, but it felt uncomfortable. It's like we're partying even though we haven't done a thing yet. And then you hear I didn't see the party in real time. I saw everything after the fact because they didn't show it on TV apparently, and they kept putting out quotes of, like he said, not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not, all that. Yeah. I'm like, that's kind of weird. That's not gonna sit well in the media. You know what I mean? And of course, the entire summer, going forward into the fall, that was all they were talking about was, LeBron's comments and him being the most hated guy in America at that point. But yeah, I love the fact that everything happened. The party didn't really sit well with me as much in that moment actually.
I'm thinking I was probably on the other end of that spectrum, like the joy of the decision and the reality that we were forming this team. I think what scared people most of all, like everybody's tried to rationalize it or create a narrative that he insulted Cleveland, that he did them wrong on national television, that he had this whole ego trip of hosting the show, et cetera. I don't buy that for an instant, because if he had said he was coming to New York, nobody would have cared. I think it was the reality that he was joining Dwayne and Chris in Miami and forming the super team, and that everybody came face to face with their mortality, like realizing, wow, 29 other teams are not as good as this one. And so I think that's why they were so upset about not just the decision, but then the ensuing party and the kind of arrogance to be able to say we're going to win multiple championships. But let's be honest, that was the reality too. It's like you saw that team forming and you're going, man, of course we're going to talk that we're going to win a lot of games. We are going to win a lot of games and we're going to be damn good in the process. And so it didn't come across as that cocky so much as just kind of realistically stating how good they were. And so, when he made that comment, I was like, oh, I know people are going to get upset about it, but I loved every second of it, man. I thought it was fun. I know it was just probably not the right thing to say in hindsight, but at the time I thought it was just a big party. It was a party for Heat fans, and it really helped kind of cement that whole us versus them sense. It really did. Like, oh man, like that state of mind about being like one franchise against 29 other franchises, maybe even against the world. It felt so real in 2010. Like everybody hated Miami, hated LeBron, and it was just like, oh, it's okay. He's our guy now. We're going to take care of him.
We took his baggage, pretty much. We took his baggage on.
Oh, without a doubt.
Like, this is our guy. This is really our guy. Which is why I was kind of hurt with the way he left. But whatever. That's another conversation.
Yes, it is.
Let me ask you this. Take us all back again to 10 years ago. Obviously, everything settles in. The Big Three happens. It's official. This and that. They start signing players and, whatever, to one-year deals and all that. What was your realistic expectations back then for this team? Like, long view, like for the next 4 to 6 years. Did you see that every year was a championship? What was your mindset? Do you think this team will win a title every single year?
Not every year. I think, there could be a team here or there that could kind of crop up and beat them. I've seen the discussion since then as far as, whether or not they were a success, whether or not they were a disappointment. And I think, again, the thought process behind forming a team like this is that you can kind of retool around the Big Three for years to come. And so you can contend for multiple titles. I mean, they did win twice out of 4 years. So I thought it would be somewhere along those lines. I still think they should have won at least 3 out of 4. Let's say if it's out of 6, probably 4, if not 5 out of 6. Like I think they were good enough to win that many. It's just LeBron specifically fell apart in 2011. 2012 and 13 were difficult. 2014, that was so many different factors there. Like that team was just, we've seen with Chicago in the Last Dance documentary, we've seen with Golden State recently, like the idea of keeping this group of 15 men together, plus the coaching staff and everything else, and having all their egos in check constantly, is such a drain emotionally. Like I asked Shane Battier about that last season, and he was like, "Oh, we knew it was done. Like we knew we couldn't keep it going." He wanted to retire. Ray Allen had one foot out the door. LeBron was already kind of, making goo-goo eyes over at Cleveland in a reunion there, and so
Goo-goo eyes.
like there was already so many different factors. But like, I mean, I thought it was going to last forever, like at least 5, 6, 7, 8 years, and they were going to win 5, 6, 7, 8 titles during that time period. Like maybe a San Antonio or another up and coming team out west might challenge, but as far as the East is concerned, I thought we would have the clear run of the place, and we did. I mean, we won 4 straight titles in the Eastern Conference. LeBron went to Cleveland. He won 4 straight there. So having LeBron in your team clearly leads to some success, at least in the conference, and then it's just a matter of being able to knock off whoever the West, at that time, Oklahoma City seemed like another natural rival. It was going to be like the Lakers Celtics of the 80s.
Yeah.
That's what my thought process was, is that they're young. They're talented as Miami, but they're young, and so that was kind of going to be a great balance, seeing those two teams match up in the finals for the next 4 or 5 years. Of course, Oklahoma City blew them up right after the 2012 finals. They traded James Harden. They never quite made it back to the finals, and then LeBron left a couple years later, so that never worked out. But it was a fun time. I really thought they were going to win a lot of rings. I thought they were going to be very, very successful. I was a little disappointed, like at the start. I'm sure you probably felt this way. The whole 9-8 start and bump gate and everything else. I was a little disappointed, but I kind of dismissed it. Like I thought, it takes time to kind of get everything going. They still had moments, even during that 9-8 stretch. Like there were moments where they were so good. I
think as fans, we took it for granted how hard it is to start something new. Like the difference between Golden State, and their success in the mid 2000s, were the aughts, whatever, and Miami's start was that Miami literally started a whole new project together. Yeah. Golden State had already had some chemistry even before they won the titles. There was already a chemistry between Steph and Clay. Draymond came in, in 15, and I think we took for granted just how hard it is to drum up chemistry, especially when you got two guys like LeBron and Dwayne, and really Chris too. Also, first options now having to make it work with one basketball, and. It's funny because like that 9-8 thing gets so polarized, and then they won 14 in a row after that. And then they won 22 or 23, whatever it was, and then they went to a little struggle again in March, and then the blueprint is over, and then they win a couple more games late in the year, and that first year was really, really wacky. It was really wacky because, and this is where I get pissed off about the LeBron thing in the finals, is that Miami, outside maybe one game, because Chicago game 1 in the conference finals, looked dominant.
Oh yeah,
throughout that playoff run, and then LeBron goes AWOL. I to this day do not understand that. To this day,
I made the mistake of watching some of the 2011 NBA Finals.
Oh,
and
I can't even watch it, buddy. I can't even watch it to this day. Still can't watch it.
For some of the content that was hard to drum up during the last couple of months when there was no actual basketball. Yeah, so I kind of reviewed the final, and I saw Game 6 specifically. Oh boy, like LeBron. In hindsight, again, I don't think he was as bad as we made it out to be, but he was so timid in comparison to the player that he became. And I wonder if a little bit, knowing now the kind of person and player that LeBron is, like I feel like it was a little bit of an ego thing for him. Like he wanted to be the quote unquote man, the alpha on that team, and he wasn't. Like they weren't running the offense through him. Like he wasn't even bringing the ball up court. He was like on the inbounds pass, they would go to Mario or somebody like that, and then he would kind of be the secondary ball handler, a guy who would kind of set, once the offense was set, then he would just kind of initiate things from that perspective. But like it's not the same kind of dominant performance that we've seen from him since 2012. Like after that season, we've heard about Dwayne kind of relinquishing control of the team or saying, you know what, you take it over, you dominate the way you can. And we've seen that that's how LeBron thrives. Like he did it in Miami and he did it in Cleveland, where he was just like, I want to be the guy that dictates the offense. And that's where he's just most comfortable. Even when I remember, him talking about going to Los Angeles and saying, no, this is AD's team. It's going to be different. I'm going to be able to take a back seat. I called BS right away. It's like,
Of
dude,
course,
you only know how to play one way, and that's with the ball in your hands and calling the shots.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. It was like you were right though, that they were dominant. Like they were some really, really fun moments during that first season there where they just looked as good as you expected to be. And then that collapse in the finals was just really, really tough to watch.
But I gotta be honest with you though, even though I hate how that ended, honestly, I mean, to this day it still disgusts me, that finals. I think that was a good thing for them though, honestly. Because as you said, the humbling of everything.
Funny you mention it, but I mean, Battier said the same thing. First of all, from his perspective, he said that if they had won in 2011, he would have signed with San Antonio because San Antonio had lost to the Mavericks in the playoffs that year. Mm-hmm. He would have signed with San Antonio, but instead, because he knew that Miami needed something extra, he chose the Heat. But then from a team building perspective, like you saw how bad that roster was outside of the big three. Like they had Eddie House putting up big points like in the finals. Like Eddie House shouldn't be playing in the finals.
Fucking Jamal McGlure, remember?
Yeah, Eric Dampier shouldn't be starting in the finals. Like this is, this was a team that had not been built well because they didn't have the cap space, and they realized, shit, we've got to kind of retool around the big three, and that's what they did. Yeah, they had Mike Miller, and he was a great addition. UD was really good too, but it wasn't enough. They needed somebody else to kind of complement and have a fit. Not just from an on the court perspective, but also off the court, like guys with good temperament and personality. And that's why Battier, a guy who was an established winner, was such a great addition for this team. He wasn't in it for himself. He was towards the end of his career. He just wanted to win a title, and he saw that Miami was the best place to do it. So it really was a wake-up call for them, not just from a team perspective, but also from a management and roster building perspective.
And Battier was the unsung hero of that Thunder series in the finals, year two.
Oh yeah. He had didn't he have like 7 3-pointers in the game? Yeah. In the final game of the series. Yeah, he was huge.
Yeah.
We always forget that because he's and then who I forgot also, and I did not realize this, but even the following season, like UD started a whole hell of a lot of games. Like I always think of Shane being the starter, but he was only there for their Miami's death lineup when it was LeBron at the 4 and Battier at the 4 and then Chris Bosh at center. Right. But UD played a lot of minutes too. He started like 55 games in 2013. I had totally forgotten that.
Yeah, absolutely. The cool thing, probably the most fun time, those 4 years to me, and how many teams, the 06 Heat team won a title. I'm a big New York Giants fan of football, so some of their championships they won, exciting times. But those 4 years to me are the most fun as a sports fan I've ever experienced. And the reason why isn't just because the Heat team itself, it's because the environment they created even around here in South Florida. Local radio especially was the most fun. Like to me, Dan Le Batard's show really took off because of the Big Three era. Like a lot of his rants and just some of the South Florida bravado and all that was created because of the Big Three team. And to me, the reason why it's fun here too, especially with local radio, is that every single game mattered because it was a big deal. Every little thing. If the Heat lost a meaningless game in December, it's all over the news. It's the first story of SportsCenter. And so that's why that era was fun, because everything mattered. Every little thing mattered.
Yeah, I mean, like the media focus was so completely on Miami from 2010 forward. Like they were the center of the basketball universe, and for good reason. I mean, they had the three of the top 10 players at that time, and they were just, like you said, every game took added significance there. They were an interesting team. Like I mean, even when Ray Allen joined the team, like there was the big decision that it was. I mean, we forget the Shane Battier edition and Ray's edition. Wait, Ray Allen joined the team in 2013. It was different.
Correct.
So
Year 3.
Yeah. the year before that, when Battier joined, it was right after the lockout, remember? And then all of a sudden we were wondering what was going to happen with the NBA, and they didn't start until Christmas Day and everything else. Like, that was an interesting time period. But yeah, even Ray's decision, like adding Rashard Lewis, like every role player that they would add, just it seemed like it was a significant part of a huge team building process here. And so that made it a lot more interesting. I mean, hey, think about it from this perspective. I wouldn't even have been writing or talking about basketball if not for the Big Three era. Like, ironically enough, the first piece I ever wrote for our old site, Hot Hot Hoops, was a fan post that I wrote 6 years ago today. Anniversary of the decision and talking about LeBron and everything else.
Yeah, I started writing with the, and I met you at that time, around the year 4 of that, going into the playoffs.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah,
and I remember
we started doing the podcast together.
Yeah.
During that last year of the Big Three. Yeah, that was
and I was hoping we get one year, maybe get another year or two out of the Big Three. Podcast be fun, and then all of a sudden we end up covering the demise. LeBron leaves and all that. It was so depressing, man. Of the 4 teams, which one's your favorite one?
Ooh, second year, that 2012 team. Like, I love Ray on the team and everything else, but I still, to this day, I know you're going to think I'm crazy, or that this is, of course, I'm kind of saying this in hindsight, being 2020 and all that, but LeBron in 2012 was different than the LeBron the following year, in 2013. I talked to my wife about it. She can vouch for me. I know that sounds kind of weak, but that's the reality. Like, seeing LeBron and the joy on his face when he won that first title against Oklahoma City in 2012 was such a great moment for me. Again, still a fan at that point. Just following him and knowing the difficult process that he had gone through just to join his team, all the crap he had taken nationally and everything else. But that was such a summer of redemption for him, because he won the MVP, he won the title, then he joined the Olympics, remember, and went there. Mm-hmm. So he started gaining back some of the fans that he had lost in 2010. But then the following year, I remember when they won the title in 2013, and he goes to accept the Finals MVP trophy, and he kind of looks at Bill Russell as they're bringing it over. He kind of holds his arms out, like saying, "Of course I'm the Finals MVP." And I remember thinking, "Oh, that's it. He's done." Like, now all of a sudden he's forgotten how difficult it was for him to get to this point. And I remember feeling kind of sad about it, because it was like part of the joy of watching him win in 2012 was knowing he had gone through this very difficult journey to get to this point. And now that joy was gone. Now it was like, oh, of course we're going to win. We're going to keep winning, and I deserve all the accolades and awards and things of that sort. And that kind of took a little bit of the joy. In 2014, I remember writing that he wasn't going to be – he was going to leave. Like, I felt confident that he was going to leave in 2014, and in fact, he wound up doing so and proving me right.
Wow. Well, so you on that a year out. Wow.
Yeah, in 2005, because you could see it, man. Like, if you remember that last year, that 2013-14, like, first Dwayne was in that maintenance program, so he was out every other day. Chris was kind of taking it over, but even he went through some injury issues. Like, Ray was a step slower, Battier was a step slower. LeBron was forced to kind of carry the load a lot more, and so you kind of saw him being a little bit more frustrated. At least I remember that being the case. And then I remember seeing very specifically, like, in game situations where he would kind of take his foot off the gas. Like, the kind of dominant player that he was the previous 2 years, he wasn't like that in 2013-14. And there were moments there where he would kind of just, like, say, "You guys take the ball. I want to see what you're capable of doing." And to me, I thought he was just kind of measuring how good the rest of that roster was and whether or not they would be, worthy of him staying there for another season. And it turns out that he didn't feel that way. Like, I think if Dwayne was healthy in 2013-14, and if LeBron didn't have concerns about Dwayne's health moving forward, he would have stayed in Miami, at least for a few more seasons.
And had they won a title too, they definitely would have stayed.
He's mentioned it. He's mentioned that if they had three-peated, they would have tried for a four-peat.
You have to.
Yeah. It wouldn't have worked out. It didn't work out that way, but it seemed like he was growing more frustrated with Dwayne's injury issues, with the way the roster was built and kind of falling apart. He just lost patience. And look, man, with him, there's a limited amount of time to establish your legacy, to kind of compete with Jordan as far as titles and your overall accomplishments are concerned. As he saw it, he said, "Look, I'm only going to have this much of a window where I can go and be dominant and restore Cleveland back to where they belong, where I thought that they would be earlier in my career. And so I understand his choice to leave in 2014, although at the time I was a lot less happy about it, I'll be honest with you.
We both were
my God.
It came on the whole podcast, man. Come on.
That was a tough time. That was really tough. Like I remember feeling really, really down about LeBron. I remember actually even being on Twitter like constantly that summer in 2014, and then just clicking, refreshing my feed, and then seeing that tweet from Lee Jenkins. Oh, that was a heartbreaker. I was on the phone. I was on the phone with my brother-in-law, and I was like, oh my God, Cleveland. He's going to Cleveland. And he was like, what? What are you talking about? And I remember telling him, oh no, he's gone. It's official. He's gone to Cleveland, and thinking, my God, must be a joke. No, it can't be happening. But yeah, he went.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I remember I was actually on the way to Trader Joe's. and
to this day, you haven't set foot in a Trader Joe's.
No, less and less now, to be honest with you. No, but I remember that whole morning, it was a Friday morning, clicking, retweet, refresh on the my Twitter, and nothing happens. And then about 12:10, as I walk out the door, go to the car, I keep refreshing it, and I see a thing. Oh, LeBron chooses Cleveland. I'm like, fuck. And by the way, I had my old radio show back then too. I had to do my radio show a couple hours later, and that was in itself 2 hours of pure comedy, man. I still have that show to this day. And the thing about that is that the LeBron news was only highlighted against the Chris Bosh situation, because there was a thought that Chris Bosh around the same time on the air was going to go to Houston.
I remember.
And he actually announced he's going to Miami while still broadcasting, which was great. So I was like, all right, we got Chris. Yes. We're good.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Like that was like in the same day, the lowest of the lows and then the highest of the highs to hear that Chris was coming back. At least it felt like we were getting something out of this. It wasn't so bad. And yeah, man, that was a very, very weird day, fun time, but yeah, very strange to kind of go from that kind of down to that high again when Chris resigned. At least it felt good. You knew that Dwayne was going to come back in 2014. And then, did you expect? I know this is kind of jumping around. Did you expect Dwayne to leave in 2016 the way he did?
The way he did?
Yeah.
That's tough because I don't know. I was pro Riley in that one.
Yeah.
It's funny. I look back. It's funny you said that too, because on Facebook memories and stuff, these last couple of days, it highlights that. And I remember on Facebook I'm saying these things, and it's different proof. I'm pro Riley in this one. Like, we can't, if we want to continue trying to compete, we can't keep paying this guy doing the Kobe thing. We can't be hypocrites saying, oh, the Lakers paying Kobe $40 million 2 years, and then you're saying now the Heat should pay Dwayne, because now it's the same situation.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, I get Dwayne's perspective. Like, every NBA player wants to make as much money as possible, and I understand that they underpaid him for a couple seasons, so I totally get why he wanted to be paid handsomely, but I agree with you. I think they had to kind of restart. Everybody now is kind of like, oh, it should never have happened that way, but I'm also of the mindset now that if he didn't leave in 2016, when he came back a couple of years later, it wouldn't have felt as sweet. Like, it was such a great reunion in 2018, but it was, absence makes the heart grow fungus.
I totally agree with you. Last thing as you go, last question. Would you curse, given everything we know now in hindsight and, going into it and, we're now 6 years removed from the whole thing. It's a 10-year anniversary, of course. Would you characterize those 4 years as a success or a failure?
That is very tough. It's very tough. Like I argued before, I feel like they should have won at least a third out of those 4 years. But, I think it also kind of put things in perspective as far as, like you mentioned before, the difficulty of building a roster, of competing every night, especially with the incredible amount of media scrutiny. Like, every team was giving Miami their best on a nightly basis. And so the fact that they were able to achieve what they did under those circumstances, I'd have to qualify it as a success. Although, again, I feel a lot stronger in that assessment if they had won a third title out of 4 years. But I can't begrudge what happened. I mean, there was a lot of things going up against them, not just Dwayne's age, but roster building and all the different factors. The league was changing. Like, I look back at those 2011 finals. neither team, either Dallas nor Miami, shot the three-pointer as much as teams would wind up doing just a couple years later. Like, the league was going at a point where they were going to change. You know, Chris Bosh being the starting center moved an era of small ball forward in a way that we didn't expect it to. So, like, the league was evolving, and Miami just they were very, very good for a 4-year period, but they would have had to change their roster pretty completely in order to continue to evolve, to compete with, you know, the Golden States and other teams around the league. So I you know, that's a long answer. Ultimately, absolutely a success, but I wish they had won a little bit more.
Yeah, like I'm the same way too. Like, I feel like it's success, yes, absolutely, because you mean, number one, if you have to find you won 2 championships, but you were in the finals every single year. You know, that's hard to do. You know, but yeah, they did leave some on the table. 11, 14, you pick it. But then again, if we sit there and say that, but then we say 11, you know, if they don't win, if they, you know, 11, they need to lose that way. But I don't know. But at the end of the day, still success, because again, you went to the finals every single year. I mean, and that's Jordan didn't do that 4 years in a row. Neither did Shaq and Kobe. So.
Yeah, a really good point. And 8 straight finals for LeBron individually. I mean, that's phenomenal.
That's insane. And that's what the Olympics do in 2012 also too.
You got it.
That's a lot of mileage there. But Dave, was awesome, man. Going back to memory lane with you, man.
Oh, always fun talking about a different time in my life, but always just catching up on basketball in general. You're always a great person to talk to about life in general, but basketball, and always good to reminisce with an old Heat fan.
Right, of course, man. Of course, on Twitter at DRamil13. Check out the Locked on Heat podcast, which is going daily, of course, and basketball's returning very soon. So, Dave, we'll talk soon, man, and hope you have another pod next month or so.
You got it. Thanks so much for having me.
All right, buddy. Take it easy, all right?
You got it, bro.
All right, man. Thanks.